Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar, how the local activists are monitoring the reconstruction of Ukraine, the experience of Irpin and Chernihiv. My name is Volodymyr Landa. I am a senior economist of the Center of Economic Strategy, and I will be moderating this event today. This event is held within the framework of the project Controlling the Cost of Ukraine's Recovery with the support of the European Union. The project is a joint effort of the Center for Economic Strategy, the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting, and the NGO Technologies of Progress. All participants are members of the RISE Coalition. This event is held in Ukrainian with simultaneous translation into English.
So dear English-speaking listeners, you can turn on English translation in the bottom bar of Zoom.
In case you have any questions, comments, you can leave them in the Q&A section or to leave them in the chat in the lower panel of Zoom. So, for a year now, project experts have been checking the costs of reconstruction and procurement in this area on a monthly basis. In addition, they're implementing the grant program, monitoring of reconstruction and recovery on the ground regarding social infrastructure facilities, involving NGOs in inspecting real facilities. And today, the program participants will present examples of such monitoring. They will talk about the challenges that they have faced during reconstruction. Also, together with the government representatives and the experts, we will be discussing whether the Build Back Better standards are being followed in the reconstruction of the country and how the principles of being built better is being implemented in practice. So we can begin, and I'm pleased to invite Mr. Christian Larsen, this national expert of the European Commission, to make an opening statement.
And the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Volodymyr. So yeah, a warm welcome to all. As mentioned, my name is Christian Larsen. I'm responsible for the local government aspect of reconstruction in the Unit for Reconstruction in the Ukraine Service, so DG NER. And before starting, I also just wanted to convey the greetings of my team leader, Mr. Gabriel Blanc, who was originally supposed to speak here. And he was very much looking forward to attend the event until unforeseen circumstances prevented him from doing so. But he actually just returned from a mission to Ukraine yesterday, and he asked me to convey his impressions of the daily destruction and hardship that you experience, but also the indomitable spirit of Ukrainians and the steadfast determination to rebuild what has been destroyed. And just as Mr. Blanc would have been, I am also very happy to be here today in support of this reconstruction effort and to be able to share the floor with our distinguished partners and talk about monitoring of reconstruction by local activists. And I understand especially in Irpin and Chernihiv for the purposes of this event. Some words about local monitoring. I mean, it's an important part of the Recovery Spending Watchdog project, which is funded by the EU and has been running since June 2023. And I want to thank the Center for Economic Strategy, the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting, and also Technologies of Progress for their engagement and commitment to this particular aspect of the project, because the local monitoring, it's a topic of major importance that you also see from here in headquarters in Brussels. Just from the simple fact that a very significant share of reconstruction projects will be implemented at the local level. And this is also reflected in the large-scale financial support provided by the EU to Ukraine. As many of you will know, in the regulation of the Ukraine facility, it is specifically stated that 20% of the grants provided as budget support, which is equivalent to approximately 1 billion euros, shall be allocated to the recovery, reconstruction, and modernization needs of Ukraine's subnational authorities. And I mean, this is just one example of and the proof of the strong and essential role of local authorities in the reconstruction and modernization of Ukraine. And this also means that it's a matter of utmost importance to closely follow and assess the reconstruction efforts as they happen on the ground, on the local level. And local activists, they are indispensable in this regard. I mean, they have the knowledge of the needs and challenges of their own community. They know the dynamics of local politics, the local administration, and they are there on the ground and as thus uniquely placed to monitor and assess the reconstruction that is taking place in their proximity. And while we have really good progress and examples of digital open access project management and procurement systems such as DREAM and Prozoro, which really makes it possible to conduct consistent and thorough monitoring. These systems are also only as good as the people who actually do the job of reviewing and assessing vast amounts of information that these tools actually make available. So you need the people to sit down and look at it and go through it and then visit the sites where reconstruction projects are implemented. And this gives civil society on the local level really an essential role in ensuring that funds allocated to municipalities are indeed spent in the best possible way, that they benefit the communities, and that they actually deliver measurable impact on people's lives. And yeah, from my point of view, it's really the only way that the reconstruction of Ukraine can fully succeed. It's through the active involvement and sustained efforts of Ukrainian civil society. And because of this, it is also of the greatest importance from the EU's point of view that civil society is empowered to continue to, I mean, on the one hand, provide analysis of the situation on the ground, to act as watchdogs against corruption and special interests, but also to partner with government levels, also local authorities, to provide solutions that ensure transparency and accountability in the reconstruction process. So to also come with, if something does not work very well, to analyze, to come with suggestions and figure out how can we do this better. So the EU has long supported the strengthening of civil society in Ukraine. I mean, this is one of the reasons it is such a high priority, and we will continue to do so in the future. And as an illustration of the attention that we pay to civil society, I can mention that the EU delegation to Ukraine at the moment is managing 69 grant contracts with civil society organizations for a total amount of about 90 million euros. And there is every intention to continue the support to also conduct strategic capacity building for civil society under the Ukraine facility. So with this in mind, I thank you for the opportunity to say some words here, and I really look forward to follow the discussion and hear what are the experiences from the ground. So thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for your inspiring words. Now we'll discuss how recovery is being monitored on the ground, but first let us present our monthly monitoring of recovery.
So let us start with our traditional monthly monitoring of the recovery. We are presenting a shortened version of the study. The full version will be soon available on the CES website, ces.org.ua, and on the big recovery portal, brp.org.ua. And to present the main conclusions of the monthly monitoring, I would like to turn the floor over to Iryna Kosse, a leading expert at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting. Iryna, the floor is yours. Thank you, Volodymyr, and I really hope that this presentation is already seen. So, our monthly monitoring, this time for June. Here you can see the full contents of the monitoring. I will just shed light on some of the sections. With the full report, please log in to our website and download the full. Let's talk about the regulatory framework. Mostly what I wanted to mention is the Verkhovna Rada supported the draft law. We don't yet understand what would be the further fate of the action plan for the implementation of the state strategy for regional development. These delays are due to the fact that the situation around the reorganization of the Ministry of Reconstruction remains open. Whether it will be divided into two ministries, what will happen to it, and also at the same time there is the question about the DREAM functionality, which is likely going to expand to the area of public investment management. Progress and financing of reconstruction, as I said, DREAM is very likely to be expanded. It can become the instrument of managing public investment, but we should not forget that DREAM still remains an experiment, and basically it's acting until November of this month, so we're expecting some legislative changes in this respect. The number of projects is growing, which are placed on DREAM. You can see this on the graph. Especially recently, we have seen adding projects in the Mykolaiv region. You can see that we have added the water, waste management, and some other projects. These are the projects that are financed on the ground. Unfortunately, destruction continues. The recovery continues, but it has slowed down, and you can see this on our monitoring, on our graphs. Apart from that, we have the program E-Restoring. Because of the lack of funds, there is the shortage now. This is the program for damaged and destroyed housing. But there is also good news. During the conference in Berlin, the government of Ukraine has signed 2 important agreements that will allow to continue to pay compensations using this. These are the agreements with the World Bank and with the Development Bank Council of Europe. So we really hope for the restoration of funding, because it's a very important program. A special topic of today, it's Build Back Better. The World Bank financing really includes this concept of rebuild back better, but what is to be included? We don't have such a principle. In some places we can find some components. So according to the World Bank report, the recovery build back better includes the following components: higher energy efficiency, modernization, compliance with sustainability standards, better functionality, including barrier-free accessibility, and resilience to climate change, including decarbonization. Of course, it's also important to introduce EU standards and to stick to principles of green economy. Funding, unfortunately, for recovery projects is very limited. It is significantly less than envisioned in the World Bank's report on urgent financing needs, and it's important to mention that we have a certain gap between the quality and sticking to the principle of build back better. It's important to determine how it is properly to rebuild and how we understand these elements of build back better, namely, for instance, barrier-free accessibility. For example, in the sphere of energy efficiency, a question comes in: to build more or to build better, in more high quality, to build quickly and cheaply, but more expensively, but in more quality. Does it make sense to build back one more classroom, or to put the solar panel? Should we install solar panels rather? Should we build another modular house for IDPs or install solar panels on several others? So these questions remain, and it's important for us to find answers to these questions. So summarizing my short performance, the question is what to do now. It's quite a complicated question. We do need to have access to housing, medicine, and education. Therefore, speed is more important. But in case this rebuilding will be not in high quality, then the future costs to maintain this will be quite high. Therefore, a dialogue between different stakeholders is urgently needed, which should be open and accessible. And this dialogue should also be brought to donors who help in the reconstruction. It is also important for us to adopt new standards for new housing construction that will meet European near zero standards, energy and zero emission buildings, and to renew programs of inexpensive loans. That's all from my side. Many thanks for your attention, and passing back the floor. Thank you, Iryna. Let me remind you that the full presentation is available at our website. You have seen now the shortened version at this sites of Center of Economic Strategy and BRP or QA. And now let's talk about how the reconstruction is being monitored on the ground. I propose to start with the city of Irpin, with Chernihiv, Tetiana Romanova, the executive director of Agency of City Initiatives, who is working in the Chernihiv region. This agency started in 2018, and it has really was raised to a significant initiative that organized various actions to improve and protect the rights of public transport passengers and became a public organization. It operates in the communities of Chernihiv region and has a network of partnership in Ukraine and abroad. Tetiana, the floor is yours.
Вітаю. Чи видно презентацію?
Welcome, colleagues. So do you see my presentation?
Видно, да?
Yes, everything is clear.
Всіх
Good.
вітаю. Дуже
Welcome
приємно
all.
сьогодні презентувати
It's a
наші
great pleasure to
результати
present our
проекту,
results
який ми
for the project
реалізовуємо
which we
в
have
місті
implemented
Чернігів.
in the city of Chernihiv, although we can say that in the Chernihiv region, because we have one community, there is one object in the Hromada that is near to Chernihiv, which also unfortunately significantly was affected because of hostilities. That's Ivanivska community, the village of Ivanivka. That's where we monitored and basically all the objects with which we have worked. This is in the city of Chernihiv. In general, based on UNDP, 10% of the infrastructure of the Chernihiv region was damaged or completely destroyed as a result of the Russian invasion. And these are more than 300 objects of social infrastructure, such as hospitals, schools, objects of social protection, culture and sports. More than 130 cultural objects were destroyed or damaged. 9 of them are under regional council. We, from our side, we have taken 13 objects into our monitoring. That's the Chernihiv Regional Academic Ukrainian Musical and Dramatic Theatre. That's the administrative building of the Commercial Court, Court of Appeal. 3 objects that were affected because of the missile attack on the 19th of August 2023. So all of these objects we also decided to take into our monitoring to see how the recovery, rebuilding of these objects is taking place. Also in our work we have some schools, number 13, number 19, 24, 33, 6 and 15. They are in city of Chernihiv. They were affected because of military actions in February, March 2022. Also, Central City Library named after Kontsubinsky and the Chernihiv Regional Universal Scientific Library named after Sofia and Alexander Rusov. Chernihiv Higher Professional School and the Ivanivsky Lyceum of the Ivanivsky Village Council, which I mentioned earlier before. Today, I would like to present to you some results very briefly in terms of the barrier-free and in terms of energy efficiency. Regarding the barrier-free aspect, we have attended all the objects. We have seen in which way the issues of barrier-free access are taken into account, how, in which quality it was done, and the main problems that we encountered when inspecting facilities for barrier-free accessibility. It's very often, it's the no tactile navigation for visually impaired or blind people, lack of parking place for people with disabilities, there is no canopy over the ramp, absence of handrails or one handrail instead of 2, which is also doesn't give the possibility to comfortably reach the premises. Uneven road surface, which is also causing discomfort when you are trying to reach the premises, and lack of a call button for people with disabilities. This is also a big problem because to inform others that because the entrance into these premises is not always possible to do this, and correspondingly such a button should be to make sure that we can inform that people really want to enter the premises. Also, a separate issue related to shelters and bunkers. Shelters are mostly, they are not meant for the free area, for the barrier-free usage of these shelters, and very often we have met such a picture as you see on the screen. This is just steps without any lifts, elevators. I mean, there is no barrier-free at all here. It's school number 6, number 13. These are the shelters which are not meant for people with disabilities. Tactile navigation, I already said that in the majority of cases it is absent, but using the example of one object, we have seen this tactile navigation. It's the central library named after Kozybinsky. It is available there, although this object has some other problems related to barrier-free access. In terms of this special button to call, only 4 objects out of 13 which we inspected have such capacity and have this call for to be call bell. That's the Chernihiv Regional University Scientific Library, Commercial Court, Court of Appeal, and the Chernihiv Higher Vocational School. Regarding the parking for people with disability, once again, that it would be with all the necessary parameters. Only we have seen this also only on the territories of the Commercial Court, Court of Appeal, and the Chernihiv Higher Vocational School. Regarding the ramps, again, what we have seen within these 13 objects that we have been monitoring, we have seen that this barrier-free access somehow is taken into account, or there was before reconstruction, but very often we see something that very often this barrier-free aspect is not really in high quality. Namely, the ramps are without coverages that doesn't allow people with disability to go up, or the absence of rails, as we already said, no canopies. So out of all the objects, we have not seen any one that would be really perfect, that all the requirements to barrier-free would be taken into account. So there are simply none of this. But still, the best out of this whole list, this is the Lyceum number 15. You don't see it on the photo. This on the photo you see school 24, Lyceum 15. It was really good ramp, but no canopy. The only question is about this canopy. School number 24, you see it on the screen. That's the only school within our objects. This is where we have this canopy, and there is the possibility to make turns. The size of the ramp does meet certain norms. So this is something that we have defined as the best ramps that are within those objects that we have monitored. School number 33 without the canopy, but more or less accessible, and the Ivanivsky Lyceum of Ivanivska Village Council. Let me give you also some examples of ramps which are not comfortable to be used. For instance, the Central City Library named after Kozybinsky, because you can see that this coverage is not uniform. There are some obstacles, like in this case, this pipe, and there is no canopy, although this object has a tactile navigation. In addition to this
Вузький пандус, знову
institution,
ж таки,
too
про
narrow
що я
ramp.
говорила, що
Once again, that's what I
це
said.
це той самий об'єкт, вузький
It's the
пандус, не
same
можна
object
розвернутися, не
that you
можна,
can't make
дуже
turns.
важко це зробити, і відповідно
It's very difficult to do
не
this.
відповідає
Namely, it
нормам,
doesn't meet
які
the
мають
norms
бути.
which should be in place.
Так, про нові сказала.
Okay,
Чернігівські
I
вищі
told you about the new ones.
професійне
The
училище так само
Chernihiv
поруч відсутні. Пандус
higher professional
не
vocational school.
некомфортний,
The ramps are
низький, не
not
відповідає тим нормам,
comfortable,
і
the handrails
немає
are
більшого
absent,
пандусу.
and there is no
тут,
canopy
якби ми вибрали
over the
на
ramp.
прикладі
So
приклади,
we
то,
have just decided to show you these
тих об'єктів, де треба
examples of those
звернути
objects
додаткову
where it's necessary
увагу
to pay additional
і
attention
подумати над тим,
and to
щоб
think
змінити цю
to make sure that we
ситуацію
could change such a
і
situation
покращити
and to
безбар'єрність
improve
цих об'єктів.
barrier-free of this
Є
aspect of
позитив
these
на майбутнє так
objects.
само.
We do have some
Наприклад,
positive things
господарський
for the
суд
future. For
планує
instance, the
розробити
Commercial
доступні
Court is
змаломобільні
planning to
групи
make
населення
accessibility for
всередині
groups
приміщення
of the
за допомогою
population with reduced
похилого
mobility
підйомника,
in
який
the
буде
middle
встановлено на
of
кожній
the premises,
сходовій
thanks to
клітині.
the
Також
inclined
передбачається
lift, which will be
встановлення
installed on each step of the
гідравлічного
stairwell.
підйомника.
It is
Це
also
те,
planned
що
to
в
install
планах.
an inclined hydraulic lift. That's what's in their
Господарський
plan.
суд також він
So the
постраждав
Commercial Court also
внаслідок бойових дій, і
was
це те,
affected
що
because of
знаходиться в
facilities,
планах.
and this is something that is in their
Є
plans.
відповідний
We also have
договір і проєктна
a
кошторисна
certain
документація.
agreement and the
Другий
draft
об'єкт – це
cost estimate.
Чернігівська обласна
The second
університетська
object is the Chernihiv Regional University Scientific Library, named after Sofia Alexander Rusov. Here in the scientific project documentation for the restoration of the cultural heritage object of the library building, it provides for the accessibility of the library for groups of the population with reduced mobility, in particular the installation of a ramp at the central entrance, paving the tactile tiles, inclusive restrooms. This is something that is already planned. We have already documentation. Regarding school number 19, we have been seeing, we have seen the engagement of funds of international projects. So they are planning to equip bathrooms, including for people with disabilities, and also with the Braille font duplication, so this tactile stickers on the handrails, installation of a lifting platform, and that's where they have taken into account this barrier-free already in the project, which is being implemented now. It should be completed until July of this year. Energy efficiency. Regarding energy efficiency, here once again we have looked to which extent what was taken into account, what was done, taking into account that during hostilities in all of the objects which we are monitoring, there were broken windows. So all of these windows, they had windows substituted, replaced into more energy efficient with the plastic windows. So on the screen you can see we have written for each school that we are monitoring what exactly was happening in terms of the energy efficiency. Okay, if we can make some conclusions regarding the energy efficiency, we can say the following. Most of the design and estimate works already foresee energy efficiency when performing repair works. What does it mean? They take into account, they make the replacement of old damaged windows into metal plastic ones. Works are being carried out to insulate the roof and walls of the premises. They do the dismantling of lamps and they change it into incandescent lamps, installation of lamps with fluorescent lamps. When repairing heating systems, old batteries are replaced with radiators. The heating system is being reconstructed with the installation of an individual heat points with the implementation of energy-saving measures. Also, they do the installation of solar panels, as we saw on the example of school number 33. Over there, we have seen the installation of the solar panels. So the energy efficiency is also taken into account. And in this direction, there is much more positive, possibly, than in the direction of the barrier-free. Regarding those objects that we have reconsidered and we have monitored regarding the barrier-free, we see that still there is something to be improved in the future, to take into account the question of barrier-free, and whenever it's not possible to find funds for this barrier-free, to at least it's important to search for that now. And using the example of the library named after Rusovs, they already have the cost estimate documentation, and they're at the stage of searching for funds to install ramps, lifts, and everything that is necessary for the barrier-free access to this object. That's all from my side. In case you have any questions, I would be very happy to reply. Many thanks, Tetiana. I would like to remind you that we can place questions in the Q&A section in the panel Zoom. And before we come to the discussion, I suggest that we also listen to another experience of recovery. We have Mykhailyna Skoryk, the executive director of the NGO Irpin and a member of the Irpin City Council. I would like to say to our viewers that this NGO was established at the end of 2022. It brings together active citizens and volunteers of the Irpin community. The activists are currently monitoring the use of funds for the reconstruction of facilities destroyed or damaged as a result of Russian attacks. So, Mykhailyna, please, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, colleagues. You can hear me, you can see me, because exactly in our part of Irpin we don't have electricity. We are at power banks, so I believe that the signal will be good enough. And in order not to repeat with the Chernihiv experience, because a lot of objects that are being rebuilt, they have similar problems and even look similarly, especially after destructions. So I would like to make more emphasis what we have seen as differently from what has been said. We have been monitoring 12 objects. That's the social infrastructure, 2 ambulatoriums that were damaged, 4 schools and 6 kindergartens. Irpin, it's 80,000 before the beginning of the war. As the outskirts of Kiev in 2014 and 2015, it was very actively built. So we have a lot of objects which are new. Kindergartens commissioned in 2021, they were repeatedly damaged in 2022 and once again renovated. So exactly using these objects and renovating schools, we have seen already insulation of walls, substitution of windows into metal plastic, but they were damaged and these works have been done anew. So I would agree to the colleague from Chernihiv in terms of energy efficiency. Our objects of social infrastructure, they look quite modernized, but whenever we talk about recovery, whether it's built back better, during the monitoring, we believe that this is the issue, because majority of the work that we have been monitoring were done back in 2022, when the city, which was by third occupied and by 2/3 became the place for hostilities, and 50% of the housing stock was significantly damaged and destroyed. They were quickly rebuilt, and wherever the works were done quickly, where it was several donors in participation, very often this was not built better, it was rebuilt just to make it SAP, and much was not taken into account also from the point of view of the barrier-free access. But there were some separate institutions that showed, in essence, a new standard of recovery. This was the works that were financed by such donors as UNICEF. UNICEF has done majority of shelters in those objects that we monitored. UNICEF fully rebuilt school number 3 in Irpin, which was fully destroyed. And during 1 year, they were preparing cost estimate documentation without roofs, without doors. This was standing in the winter period, so they were preparing for 1 year, and just within 8 months they could start the process, educational process. Also, it's the kindergarten Radist, it's now called Ruta. It's the flower that is uniting Ukraine and Lithuania from the funds of Taiwan. Also, school number 12 that now continues its work for recovery. They are finalizing their shelters. Sokar, Azerbaijan is co-financing this, and the government of Azerbaijan. So at these objects we see an attempt of new standards, but also very often the problem is that people who are doing the works, it's the designers and the contractors, they are not ready to put into the center the person who will be using those improvements related to barrier-free. So our monitoring had several components. There was 4 methodologies that we have used: the methodology of own monitoring and collection of data, filling out some questionnaires, also going to the spot of our professional from the group of the active of Vitaly Pcholkin is moving in a wheelchair, so we were going to the object with him to see whether the ramps and all of these introductions that were on the object, that they truly are comfortable for the person who is wheelchaired. And based on the results of such trips, we have made 2 projects. These are the videos, and these are the recommendations in terms of barrier-free. We also are convinced that NGOs have to control not only the work of the monitoring, but they can also give recommendations how to improve. So this recommendation of barrier-free that we made as a separate project, we count that we can transfer to the responsible people of the Irpin City Council, the heads of educational institutions and healthcare institutions that we have monitored, so that in the future they could use these recommendations in their work. I would like now to show you how these recommendations look like. This is our school number 12. This was done with the Sokar money. You can see the new facade that was done
вимогами енергоефективності, тобто стара школа побудована на початку 90-х, зараз енергоефективно, тому що виконана
This was built in the 90s because now it's done as installation works. We have the places for people with handicap, with disability. It's a quite barrier-free access, but the ramp is already in such a shape that it's not possible to go over it independently. And we see more or less same kind of picture regarding all institutions. This. Are you showing the presentation? I thought I did the share screen. Then I will repeat. This is the facade of the school number 12. You can see it, right? And we are seeing that this object does meet the requirements of the energy efficiency from the visual point of view. This was done during this upgrade when not only windows were substituted, but also the insulation of the facade. Here we see the examples of the barrier-free access to the school. The city council has helped when we did this monitoring. There was a mother with a child here, but the ramp itself, it's done, but without sticking to the requirements, and the wheelchaired person would be quite difficult to go over it because of those barriers which need to be taken out, and rails have to be reworked. Also in the shelter, we can see it's very typical. All shelters in our region, these are basements without the possibility of access, with the possibility of barrier-free access, and also the entrances are not well thought through. So those basements that had, they did not get the mistakes. And Okay, for instance, that's the universal toilet. It's here. But of course, we understand that this was the period of holidays, and it was used as a warehouse, and we were explained that they don't have such a need. But in any case, the call button was both in the toilet and with the person on duty, so it was working. So very often we see that in case barrier-free is taken into account, there are quite a lot of typical mistakes which can be corrected in case we understand that these DBNs are not formal and are done exactly to cover the needs of one person. I want to show you a video. This is the video from school number 3 and also from the school number 17, which is now renamed to Lyceum Mria. Mria means dream. This school was fully rebuilt with the UNICEF funds and other European partners who joined it. Also the schoolyard by the city council and the old school that had UNICEF joined here. And at the second school we have the solar panels, and this system is working very effectively. Let me show a video so you would see how it's working in practice, what is from those improvements that are made during this rebuilding. They are quite functional, and what is really not working. And I will make a few comments to the comments that you will make. I will now
Звук титри, так?
Вони просто є елементом декору. Це буде ясно.
Школа має 3 поверхи, між якими встановлені спеціальні платформи для підйому крісел колісних, але шлях до них лежить через їдальню. Що тут із доступністю?
Доволі комфортно, тобто широко, висота є близько 75 см, тобто дозволяє під'їхати на кріслі колісному. Є столи нижчого, є столи вище.
А ось і платформи, які допоможуть подолати сходи. В теорії. На практиці ж навіть заїхати на цю платформу неможливо. Вона буквально висить у повітрі.
Це є небезпечно. Це питання до виробника даного типу підйомника. Мені треба допомога заїхати. Як на мене, замало ширини. Прям дуже. Ти на ширшому просто тут фізично не зможе здійснити цей маневр. Можна самостійно цим скористатися буде важко.
Але піднятися бодай на 2-й поверх нам так і не вдалося. Навіть відповідальна за супровід підйомника людина не змогла впоратися із несподівано зламаною платформою.
Воно виглядає дуже травмоопасно. Мені воно прям виглядає небезпечно. Воно не працює, і така історія буде постійно. Я думаю, за ті кошти, які були витрачені, було б набагато ефективніше прибудувати тут звичайну ліфтову кабіну.
Але тут є ще один вид підйомників. Протестуємо його?
Тут працює. Приїхав в Рівень.
Та на виході все ж є нові перешкоди.
Оцей кут нахилу занадто крутий. Я не знаю, в чому проблема зробити його витягнутим. Я тут не заїду.
Не менш важливе питання – доступ до укриття. Ним користуються не лише учні і вчителі, а й мешканці навколишніх будинків. Інших укриттів у цьому районі немає.
Одній людині я би не пробував. Враховуючи мокре взуття, прямо стрьомно.
До спуску в укриття довелося залучити навіть нашого оператора.
Дивіться, так, спиною не піднімати, ось тут рама, не піднімайте, просто нам треба з'їжджати, щоб рівномірно так воно спускалося. В принципі, можна зрозуміти, як це буде відбуватися в умовах якихось екстрених чи стресових, це буде фіаско. Потрапити сюди фізично неможливо самостійно. В умовах екстрених уявляючи кількість дітей, які сюди швидко переміщуються, навіть з допомогою інших осіб, це буде небезпечно.
А ще до укриття теж є прописані абсолютно чіткі вимоги, аби воно вважалося безбар'єрним. Заскріншотьте для перевірки вашого. Зараз це укриття тимчасового перебування вміщує до 500 дітей. Тому навчання у школі на 1500 учнів вибудоване у декілька змін. До війни тут був класичний шкільний підвал, з якого вивезли 34 КАМАЗи сміття. Облаштування укриття профінансував дитячий фонд ООН ЮНІСЕФ. Ця ж організація зробила і укриття в іншій ірпінській школі, номер 17, яка зараз має назву «Ліцей Мрія». Спробуємо протестувати його на безбар'єрність.
Перше, як я 3 роки назад став керівником, я опустив калітку, щоб людина могла заїхати. Сюди спеціально зробили, щоб можна було людині заїхати в хол.
Але далі, на жаль, людина у кріслі колісному не проїде.
Загалом коментувати тут важко, школа не є безбар'єрною.
Зараз у школі немає дітей, які користуються кріслом колісним. Однак укриттям, так само як і в попередній школі, користуються не лише учні.
У нас, згідно норм ДСНС, є 3 типи укриттів. І всі вони найпростіші укриття. Одне знаходиться, де був колись настир, друге знаходиться на 1-му поверсі, вікна закриті ФБС-блоками, і третє у нас знаходиться в роздівальні спортзалу. 400 чоловік зверху, 200 чоловік в другому укритті і 60 дітей в спортивних залі.
Навіть у відносно доступне укриття на 1-му поверсі крісло колісне не проїде. І Віталій готовий поділитися рекомендаціями.
Так, в принципі, загальна висота тут близько метра. Тобто, якщо брати нормативний пандус, то він має бути близько 12 метрів при такій висоті. Його буде варто робити вздовж і з поворотному.
Саме укриття має ось такий вигляд. Директор каже, на них вчилися, у тому числі й ДСНС. І спільно прийшли до рішення закрити вікна бетонними блоками і таким чином влаштувати найпростіше укриття. Примітно, що ця школа після сильних руйнувань прийняла дітей вже у вересні 22-го року. І директор напівжартома поділився лайфхаком для пошуку грошей на відбудову.
Приблизно з 8 квітня вже почали харчувати людей, які залишились в Ірпені. Це було десь приблизно 150 чоловік. Завершували харчування, то вже в день харчували 4,5 тисячі людей. Таким способом ми привертали до себе увагу медіа світових, які на певному етапі побачили нас ООН, ЮНІСЕФ і допомогли нам в відбудові. Допомогла і місцева влада, допомогла і військова адміністрація. Тому всі по чуть-чуть.
У підземне укриття Віталій теж не зміг потрапити. Жодних пандусів чи механізмів, які могли б спустити крісло колісне, тут немає. Всередині теж особливо не розвернешся, але є система вентиляції, пледи, очищена вода і вбиральні. Через перевантаженість школи навіть без тривог у цьому приміщенні проводяться уроки. Зробити укриття і не лише їх доступними для усіх без винятку людей – важлива задача. Зруйнованих окупантами на 75%
Я зупинила відео, чи мене чути?
I decided to stop the video. Can you hear me? What we are seeing the best practices, and we understand that these are not ideal examples. They still need improvement if we are talking about the full free access, but barrier-free access. But we understand that generalizing this experience and making such recommendations, making them generally accessible through the Ministry of Education, through Oblast, educational departments, and having shared such experiences, we can avoid those mistakes that were there, because a lot of decisions were made really quickly without the opinion that we really have to make really better than it used to be. And we are ready to take in veterans and to understand whether we have the people that are wheelchaired or not. So I'm also ready to make a more detailed feedback and ready to answer your questions, but I believe this project is very much useful and it can give exactly that methodological material that will bring the significant changes at the legislative level and also changes in the work of donors with the educational and healthcare institutions. Thank you, Mykhailyna. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for making Hromadas better. And you are helping to make this way in the monitoring of the Hromadas. We are behind time, but in any case, we will not be able not to discuss this. I can see Myroslava Negoda, Chief Specialist of the Department of Territorial Restoration and Creation of a Smooth Living Environment at the Department of Spatial Planning and Architecture at the Ministry of Infrastructure of Ukraine. Myroslava, you have seen examples how this is done in various communities. Maybe you can somehow generalize this in case you have some regional specifics in some of the regions. Please, the floor is yours. Good afternoon to everyone. I would want to say that let us start from the e-recovery, exactly from the recovery. So we have some good news. Yesterday we restarted payments regarding the damaged housing. So we would like to report to you about e-recovery and then about barrier-free. Thank you for this monitoring. Unfortunately, we are not seeing this for the first time, that our principle build back better is not always taken into account. Therefore, we would like to say that last year we have done monitoring regarding the barrier-free access of 53,000 objects, and we have seen that only 22% are barrier-free, which are even conditionally barrier-free, because this was done not by the civil monitoring, but the operators of the objects, not the expertise that has a certain professionalism. So this conditional 22%, this is the indicator that we have to start off into a better barrier-free environment. Regarding e-recovery, I wanted to explain to you that in the framework of the state program, e-recovery, almost 96,000 applications for the damaged and 15,600 for the destroyed. For the destroyed, we have transferred 5 billion for the destroyed, 5.8 for the damage, 5.6. 2,900 certificates already implemented. When we opened this program, people were not so active, but now we are really seeing such a statistics that people are interested. They're sending in more applications, and we are implementing such a program. Regarding the barrier-free, at the recovery objects, I can tell you that we have such a resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers from the 14th of February 2023, that during design and construction, during the recovery of the damaged and destroyed housing, it is a must to take into account barrier-free access, energy efficiencies, providing with shelters to the population. And in general, this resolution, it repeats the construction norms, which are in any case a must. While this construction is taking place, it's a must to have this barrier-free with these consequences of SS2, SS3, with reconstruction, capital repairs, and new construction. So it turns out that these construction norms are acting since 2018. They were adopted in 2018. They became effective starting from the 1st of January 2019. They are mandatory for all types of buildings, apart from private homes, private houses. But during martial law, we ran into a problem of the ban of this construction control, and the results you have seen in your monitoring results, which definitely is not as good. The situation is such that whenever this object is commissioned, it's not going through the check of the architectural control. So it happens that not all norms, there is the situation that unfortunately not all inclusion norms are taken into account. So to the Cabinet of Ministers, we have submitted the draft law on changes. For the time, it is not positively reviewed in the Cabinet of Ministers. So we're expecting for some result. Also, we want to mention that we see some requests regarding that the projects of recovery are not barrier-free, and we are working on the mechanism of reacting to such referrals. So at the moment, there is a possibility of making checks by the architectural control, knowing that these violations of construction norms, they are a threat to life. If you see such cases, very evident cases when the project documentations are really not adhered to, please turn to us, to the Ministry of Infrastructure. We will be transferring this to the State Inspection of Architecture and City Planning for consideration to make sure they can give justification of a threat to life. We will issue a decree, and after that, this object will go through an inspection from the State Architectural Inspection. They are trying to recognize what are the violations in terms of inclusion, and that makes the developer change the project and take into account this barrier-free. In case you have questions, I'm ready. We're ready. In case it's 30 seconds, you can do now, or we can do this in the Q&A. I would like to briefly remark that even after our video, the lift that this Vitaly couldn't go up, it was already fixed, and they started to use this object, and this was used in the new objects, so this was a really good impulse. So sometimes there is not enough of the methodology assistance of people-centered approach, and if the Ministry of Infrastructure can make some recommendations how to make shelters inclusive, this will speed up the process, because really there are no technical solutions. Therefore, they are not being implemented. We have not had such practice. Thank you. Look, in general, we have the album of barrier-free solutions. It's like really with a lot of parameters, with a lot of pictures explained. But shelters, it's a difficult story. It's very often the basements. One thing, of course, when it is digged, like for instance, below the stadium, and you can set up some steps and some, if it's just a basement and the stairs are 1.2 meters, we have to think of the fire safety. We have seen this in the project documentation, that starting from the first floor to the shelter, they break the walls and they put the vertical lift. This is the solution which is more expensive. Not everybody would want to go for that, and not in all objects is possible. Because of that, the situation with this shelter is quite difficult. It's an existing building which is very difficult to change. Therefore, the only real solution is when we have the narrow steps, is this vertical lift, or conditionally, the only entrance can be provided from the outside by creating a multi-level ramp that goes into the shelter. We have seen such cases in the project documentation to schools, and unfortunately the situation is quite difficult. The recommendations to shelters they have been, we have even adopted the construction standard for shelters. We understand that it is being read by architects and construction people. This is not for a regular director of the school because there are a lot of normatives, statistics. So we will take this into account, your proposal regarding the methodological recommendations for shelters. Thank you, Myroslava. Good. Unfortunately, we are behind time, and we have also Oleksandra Khomyk, the director of the Department of the Chernihiv Oblast Administration. We have seen the vision of the process from the civil activists and from behalf of the ministry. So for the completeness of the picture, let's see how this the oblast authorities look at it. Ms. Oleksandra, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. Many thanks to everybody for participation. I wanted to show you some presentation. Unfortunately, it has disappeared. Taking into account that we have little time, let me explain to you what I wanted to say without a representation. The Chernihiv region is really a region that has been affected a lot. Our biggest losses is people, but of course we also have a lot of destroyed and damaged objects. There are more than 14,000 of them, and they are placed in 38 communities. 10 are really the most affected on the territory of our oblast, which are definitely, they need more, most of the assistance. More than 80% of all destructions in Chernihiv is the private housing of citizens, and in this amount, more than 10,000 of damaged, more than 1,200 are not able to be renewed, recovered. With joint effort and using the state program of recovery, using the assistance of our international partners, we managed already to renew some more than half of the housing. Part is still in the process of recovery, but unfortunately we still need recovery of more than 3,500 objects. One other priority for us is the recovery of the social infrastructure institutions in order to provide basic services to our citizens, namely education, medicine, social protection, sports, culture. These are the fields where we have not yet started the recovery because there is a prioritization of recovering certain objects. Altogether in the oblast, 340 objects of social infrastructure were destroyed or damaged, including 5 social care institutions and 110 institutions of culture and sports. We have already renewed 166 objects. That's almost a half of all objects. For the recovery, we are using different sources of financing which are accessible to us. From the state budget this year, we have foreseen around 1 billion hryvnia for the implementation of the projects. It's the liquidation fund, and these are the balances of the subvention and the balances of some funds from the European Bank, also the loan program and the subvention on providing safe conditions in the secondary schools. Alexander, we see our screen. We don't see the presentation. Basically, I've already explained it all to you, but a big role in recovery belongs to our international partners. And
В рамках роботи офісу ми формуємо актуальний перелік потреб територіальних громад, необхідні для відбудови і допомозі.
In the assistance to recovery, all the needs that we have mentioned to partners, they are formed on needs and requests from communities. And with recovery, we're working in the very close contact with communities where it is most needed. This is even seen from what I already said, that more than 10 communities suffered most, and exactly in these hromadas we had the biggest recovery process, because these hromadas do require this at most. In general, in Chernihiv, please could you turn off your demonstration, because we still see it. We would rather see you. You see the presentation? No, we see your filing system. Just a second.
Так. Добре, тоді давайте так. Здійснюємо співпрацю з понад 400 організацій-донорів, партнерів з розвитку, благодійні організації, з них 53 – установи та партнерські організації ООН.
These various organizations, each organization has been specializing in various kinds of assistance. We engaged some 20 organizations for schools, social sphere, some more than 30 organizations. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, we have concluded in Oblast by various subjects more than 350 documents on cooperation, memorandums, agreements, and they need this assistance. So the Oblast administration has worked almost 50 documents on cooperation. We have the increased number of international assistance. Now in Oblast we have 9 of such projects. 2 are prepared for the registration, and I want to separately mention on the initiative of the President of Ukraine regarding the patronage of separate countries for the recovery of Ukraine. Chernihiv Oblast is helped by France and Latvia, and we have some specific projects which are being implemented. And it's very good inter-regional cooperation, which in turn helps to develop the inter-municipality cooperation, because back in 2022 we signed an agreement of cooperation with some French regions. This year we started with the German federal land, so our cities are starting the cooperation at the horizontal level, and apart from cities, these institutions start their communication, and with the objective of coordination of these recovery processes, not waiting for the state strategy of the regional development when we officially have to adjust our own strategies of development. Last year, we have developed a strategic document that is, we called it the strategic document, Chernihiv Oblast from Recovery to Development. We have noted our strategic objectives and specific steps where we are making this recovery in all spheres. And these are such fields of Chernihiv is the safe region that covers all aspects of security, both shelters, demining, food security, energy security, ecological security. The second work stream is the comprehensive recovery of infrastructure, and we're seeing that this direction, assessment of damages, development of a clear plan with priority, usage of modern technologies and innovations. It's the principle of partnership, engaging maximum number of participants for co-financing. It's also taking into account needs and interests, keeping the principles of sustainable development and ecological security. That's all, more or less. All of these aspects can be brought to this build back better approach, but I think in the beginning of our event, Iryna said that we have to have this public dialogue, taking into account the limitation of financial resources. Should we make it in more quality, or should we make just more quantity, taking into account that we are working to make sure we can provide? The needs of people, what we should do to put windows. Ideally, it all has to be done comprehensively. There should be done a big project. Unfortunately, our partners are not yet ready to invest big money into the rebuilding of specific projects. And even that library that we saw by Tetiana Romanova, that it has the project documentation that takes into account all the principles of barrier-free access. Unfortunately, it's not we are not able to find financing for this project because it's quite expensive, and that is not the most expensive that we have in the Oblast for recovery. So in the process of the recovery, we are actively engaging our communities to dream, and we have already 325 projects introduced there for the total amount of 17 billion hryvnia. We even calculated that's like the fifth place among the regions. It's the third strategic objective is rebuilding of economy, and all of these strategic objectives, they're aimed at the fourth objective, the main one. It's the preservation of the human potential. It's exactly why we are doing this, the recovery and the development. We are working to make sure that we could create conditions to have people return to our region and creating conditions for the comfortable living and self-realization of those citizens who remain in the oblast. I just also wanted to give you some more examples of Build Better. I think Ms. Romanova also mentioned about this Ivanivsky Lyceum. So working on this Ivanivsky Lycey, the recovery was done by 10 various organizations and funds. So the Lyceum has already become better than what they used to be. But in order to complete this project and to really call it ideal, there is a lot of work, and there are a lot of places where we can improve. So we together have a lot of work in front of us. Many thanks. Thank you, Oleksandra. Definitely the work will be enough for everybody. We should exactly inform this in chat. They ask about your presentation. We will definitely send it out to everybody who would wish. So today we have also Anna Ackermann. She is the member of the board of ECODIA, expert at the International Institute for Sustainable Development. We talked a lot today about Build Back Better, and I wanted to ask you, what is this better? What are its key parameters, how to scale this experience, and how to attract financial and not only financial resources for reconstruction? Anna, please take the floor. Thank you so much. I will try to say it ASAP because the time is up. I'd like to thank you for the invitation, and thank you for raising this subject, and thank you for the monitoring, Ms. Tetiana, Ms. Mykhailyna, and their teams. Many thanks. And possibly I will focus a little bit, mostly not so much on barrier-free, but rather energy efficiency, not only because I have certain experience in this, but also because this is really super important. We understand in which condition is our energy system. We understand that in front of us is very difficult winter. What to say now when we have only 4 hours per day electricity? I'm looking at the latest news, and they're not so good. The Bushtinska power station can't be renewed. It's more than 2 megawatt. And this is really turning into some very specific actions on the ground. And with the first presentation we heard, and this was really most important for us, and it's very important that people would need access to housing in order to bring back normality. And in 2022, that's how it all happened. Now, this is also changing, once again, the situation in energy, because we can have housing, but in case we don't have electric energy, we can't have the heat, we can't have the water. And so in such a way, we would need to search where to flee, where it's all present, the water and some heating. So it's very critical, and whatever pertains these concrete things about building back better here and now for Ukrainians, it's exactly about energy efficiency, and that's about the autonomous independence at the level of each building separately and at the level of the community. Also, from the first presentation, I heard that this notion of build back better can be really treated separately, but we have a very important definition which was proposed by the United Nations even 20 years ago. I think it fits us well, and it is really in the first place about the resilience. And we have hearing this for a long time, and it sounds like that it is really connected to these emergencies. So it did sound during COVID, after the COVID pandemic, in the European Union and all over the world. Build back better, that's usage of stages of recovery and reconstruction after emergencies to improve resilience of communities and countries by integrating measures to reduce risks to these emergencies in the future during renovation of the physical infrastructure, public systems, and recovery of livelihoods, economy, and the environment. It's all about us, that we have to really build back sustainable systems. That's very specific, because when we are rebuilding the building, we are not only substituting the windows, but we have to look at these projects in a more comprehensive manner. And Oleksandra said that this already has to be built into the system. Just a few words. It's very important in our today's discussion, because a lot has been mentioned that supposedly with the energy efficiency, everything is all right. Because when you look, okay, we have the insulation, the windows are here, then it seems like it's all okay. In reality, it's much more complicated than this, because with the energy efficiency, we have such a thing that there is this essence of these implemented measures, which are not seen from the outside. And insulation sometimes don't give you any savings of resources. Yes, this may become more warm inside, but we're not saving the energy. And in order to implement in a more systematic way, we have to start from the energy audit. And it's very interesting whether these institutions that were monitored, whether energy audit was done, at least some consultation with professionals that would mention which measures have to be implemented one after another, because all of it is pertaining to the professional activities. On the basis of the energy audits, we can make some certificate, especially after the modernization of the building is complete, the certificate for the institutions that shall mention the level of energy efficiency after modernization. Another important aspect regarding the energy efficiency, it's once again very practical. In case you put solar panels, really super fashionable on the school, but there is no anyone who can be responsible for that. It can stay there without working, and really can just stay there. And it's important whether there are people in these institutions who are responsible for this equipment, which is basically called energy managers. With Mr. Mykhailyna, basically we faced some, I think, encountered 1 year ago when we cooperated, and we talked about the position of the energy manager. Definitely at the level of the community, there has to be energy manager who is monitoring all the budget institutions, but in each budget institution there has to be a responsible person who knows how this new equipment works and what are the behind how to save electric energy. And I would also like to finish, because also a very important question to implement anything, it's first of all the financial resources. Of course, the human resources, that's also a big problem. Also at the national level, this bringing standards closer to European and the norms. Unfortunately, they're not working yet. So in reality, we are running in our own pace. We have our own standards. Very soon there should be a standard starting to work that Iryna mentioned in her first presentation. It's called what concerns buildings. Buildings with near zero consumption of energy. But we don't have that standard yet. It's not yet adopted, but it's this beautiful name. What is it all about? It's about that our buildings shall become more energy efficiency, more independent, consume energy from the renewable sources that are produced as close as possible to the consumption places. This is something that Hromadas need now. So what concerns the financial resources, if we talk about the standards, I want to finalize here and to emphasize. So that's happening now, although we would want to launch it in 2022, at least in 2023. But we now have, just several days ago, the government has supported the fund of decarbonization. This fund will be working to make sure that the budget institutions, the communal companies, the industrial companies would be able to take a loan at a low rate for such exactly measures. Energy efficiency, renewable, also 579 program several weeks ago. There was also news that it will also work to make sure that the entrepreneurs would install alternative energy sources and would be more autonomous. And definitely there are human civil society initiatives. The demand is huge. It's hundreds of communities who want to have projects for the based on renewables. There is a boom now. Everybody wants that in the first place, and we have to look at that. These are the objects of critical infrastructure. That's in the first place. Hospitals, water canals, water utilities that should not stop. They have to work 24/7, and there are dozens of such projects. I can send you a link that could be of use to you, who you should turn to. And of course, with the nearest winter, we are not able to physically implement this because we don't have enough people. First of all, people, not even the financial resources, but people. But we have to go in this direction because this winter, the life doesn't stop. We have to go into this direction. And this should be the cities like Zhytomyr. In Zhytomyr, there was no single disconnection of electric energy because for 10 years they're doing the diversification of heat supply, electric supply. They have been working as a system. So if you go to it comprehensively, otherwise it will be all chaotic. It will be very difficult to put these puzzles together. Therefore, to rebuild better than it used to be, yes, it's more expensive. And Ms. Oleksandra said that it's important to do that wherever it's possible and to come to these questions in a more comprehensive and in some ideal world when the standards of EU will be around. We're going this way. We are not fleeing anywhere. We will have to do this. We will have to see at the new standards, not about energy efficiency. Additionally, adaptation of buildings with the climate, not to damage the biodiversity, not to retain water, so some ecological parameters. So we'll have to take that into consideration, and maybe our monitoring 1 year or 2 years down the road will be more comprehensive, but in the first place, of course, it's our survival and welfare, at least so we could really survive the next heating season. Once again, let me share several links into the chat. Hopefully this will be... Thank you for the concentrated and very much thoughtful and... Okay, we have run out of time, so we have time for a very short feedback from Mykhailyna, and we will be rounding up. I just wanted to say, whenever we are comparing energy efficiency with barrier-free, we were looking where the biggest progress was. And of course, energy efficiency, it is really pushing Hromadas to implement energy manager. These are the structural changes at the level of municipalities. Unfortunately, this barrier-free is not taking place. Maximum some advisory groups that are not really influencing it, and they can't really communicate on a regular basis with the architecture. We talked about comprehensiveness. I fully would agree to this, and the request from Hromadas sounds like this. Allow us to have at least from petrol, so we are in any case moving to our dream with steps that are real, and we are saying that whenever we always would try, not always, whenever we try, not always it would really become the best. Thank you for talking about it, because this is really a good place where a good platform to share, and without such an experience it will be really difficult. Thank you, Mykhailyna. So today we have heard the experience of the regions from regions in rebuilding from all sides, central and local authorities, civil society. We have identified both achievements and certain problems, and most importantly outlined ways to solve them, not just fixing the problems. This cooperation is very important for the future, and we've also have triggered others to make monitoring the reconstruction in your communities, helping Ukraine in this war. This is also the way how you can help your country. We would be very much happy if any of our citizens, our viewers, will also follow this way. Thank you for the participants. Thank you very much. This event is held within the framework of the project Controlling the Cost of Ukraine's Recovery with support of the European Union, and the project is a joint effort of the Center of Economic Strategy, the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting, and the NGO's Technologies of Progress. Wish you peaceful skies and see you next time.